Pratim, link please.
Link.
Received in a chat box.
I have shared the link in the chat box of Zoom.
Added.
It's in the chat box. I've shared it.
Shared, already shared.
The link has been shared on the WhatsApp group. Yash bhai, you can start.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Environment Cell of the New Law College, Bharati Vidyapeeth, deemed to be University Pune, I, Yash Harshvardhan, welcome you to the second edition of our annual flagship event, Urgently Required Joint Action, U.R.J.A, being conducted online. I also welcome our Honorable Principal, Dr. Bhagyashree Deshpande ma'am, a leading environmentalist herself, who conceptualized the idea of having a dedicated environment cell in our college. Friends, this moment is special for two very specific reasons. One, this event is being conducted on a very important topic on the World Environment Day. And second, to explain its basics, its nuances, its various dimensions and depths, we are joined today by an expert of a reputed stature. Friends, it is my honor to introduce you to our keynote speaker for the event today, Dr. C.K. Varshney. Dr. C.K. Varshney is Professor Emeritus Environmental Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Distinguished Adjunct Professor of the Asian Institute of Technology, Bangkok. Also, Sir is the Chairman of the Review Panel Climate Change Program and member of the Expert Committee on Climate Change, Department of Science and Technology. In his long and illustrious association with the government, Sir has held various other important portfolios as Secretary National Committee, Environmental Planning and Coordination, and was also the Member Secretary of the Indian Delegation to 1972 Stockholm Conference on Environment. Sir is the Founder Secretary of National Man and Biosphere Committee, leader of the Indian Delegation to Intergovernmental Meeting of Ramsar Convention, Chairman of UNESCO Task Force on Biosphere Reserves defining scope and criteria, and Chairman alternate EIA Consultants Accreditation Committee, Quality Council of India. Sir has also initiated a nationwide research program for the first in areas of ecology and conservation under the aegis of National Man and Biosphere Program. Sir was member of the National Wetland Committee, Chairman Wetland Research Committee, and member National Wetland Authority Ministry of Environment and Forest. As a mark of his high intellectual caliber, Sir has authored and edited many books and published in internationally reputed journals. Sir is a fellow of Indian Association for Air Pollution Control and also a recipient of various prestigious awards in appreciation, like the Vasvik Award of Environmental Sciences and Technology, Swami Pranavanand Saraswati Award, and Environmental Sciences for Environmental Sciences and Ecology. It is an honor, sir, to have you with us today. Sir, we now request you to kindly deliver the keynote address. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Professor Dr. Deshpande, Dr. Jayashree, Dr. Jyoti. First of all, I would like to thank the New Law College for inviting me and giving me this opportunity of talking on this very important day, which is the World Environment Day. I am particularly connected with this day as I was one of the persons on behalf of the government of India to have voted for the agreeing to this day as a World Environment Day. This is a day on which actually the Stockholm Conference started in June And to mark that day, on the concluding session, General Assembly, this resolution was passed. And ever since, this day is being celebrated to propagate and to remind people about their duty as well as their connection with nature and with the environment. With this, I will come to the topic of the day, which relates to the conservation of wetlands, strategies and challenges for the future. I think there are a large number of ecosystems, as you may have already seen and also experienced, such as forests, ocean, grasslands, deserts. Likewise, there is another ecosystem which is known as wetland. Traditionally, wetlands have not been given much attention and regarded as wastelands. And this kind of a legacy even continues today, unfortunately. Though things are changing, but slowly. So with the help of some slides, I will take you through the introduction to the wetlands and also describe you why they are important and why should we conserve them and worry about them. And in doing so, what are the strategies that we have to adopt? And what are the future challenges? And how they are going to help us? Because anything that one would like to conserve must have a very convincing, positive value to the society. With these few words, I will now take you through a tour through some slides. Now, first of all, let us understand what are wetlands. Wetlands are shallow areas which naturally accumulates water. They may be permanently submerged under water, or the water may be there in these shallow areas temporarily. That is, for certain part of the year, they may be dry. And following rains or during rains, they may accumulate water. They are connected with the groundwater because they are the one which recharges the groundwater. And they harbor a large number of plants and animals which are adapted to survive in water, saturated habitats. Examples of wetlands include rivers, floodplains, waterlogged areas, rice fields, swamps, marshes, bogs, mangrove, estuaries, mudflats, corals, and shallow coastal areas. They are known in different parts of the country by different names. Sometimes they are known as ponds, sometimes they are lakes, sometimes they are tal, and so on and so forth. With different languages, they assume different names, and with different people and different societies, they are called very differently, depending upon their function and use for the society. The important thing is that they are delineated and one can see them very easily. Wetlands need not have water all the time. These are very distinct type of ecosystems that are most productive. And I emphasize this again, they are most productive. When I say productive, I mean that by taking atmospheric carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight, they are the big factories of producing matter. The organic matter, the plant life, the phytoplanktons, which do photosynthesis and convert and harvest solar energy and provide basis for other animals to feed and to grow and provide a whole range of activities which really provides a web of life with fish and so on. Being fish in the wetlands attracts the birds, and fish being in the wetlands attracts the human beings because they are the best and a very prized source of protein. So they provide food. Not only that, they form integral part of the global water cycle. Because as rain comes, they hold water and prevent a flood or reduce the severity of the flood. They provide a wide range of ecological services about which we will discuss as we move through these slides. Wetlands occupy worldwide nearly 6.4% of the Earth's surface. But the functions that they perform, the services that they provide to the humanity are in great disproportion to their small size. Unfortunately, this realization has come very late. And therefore, it became necessary to really go an extra mile and have a special international convention for their preservation and their safe custody for the present and for the use of the future generations. Now, before we move further, it is important for us to really fix our mind about the definition which has been largely agreed upon by a majority of the experts in the field. And these are known as areas of marsh, fen, peatland, as I have mentioned earlier, water, whether natural or artificial, because sometimes it is possible to create artificial wetlands. In fact, many have been created and we are taking great advantage of that, such as dams, backwaters. They may be permanent or temporary, with water that is static or flowing, such as rivers, static, such as lakes, fresh water they may have brackish water or salt water, such as salt lakes that we have in Rajasthan, including areas of marine water, that is the edge of the sea, where during the low tide, the depth does not increase more than 6 meters. So I think the entire length of our coastal area of the peninsular India, which is about 7,000 kilometers, the shallow areas are all included. So I think it's a huge area, and a wide variety. And therefore, it is quite logical that in different places they are known with different names. Now, this has been a very serious drawback in providing a kind of basic framework for their conservation and a communication message which is effective. Because earlier they were not known for as wetlands, but wetland now is a generic term which is provided to all these water bodies which I have just enumerated. Now, wetlands are very colorful. They harbor a wide variety of life. And some of the water birds that you see, in fact, very recently, there was a news item in the newspapers that flamingos have really occupied some bay area close to Bombay and provided the beautiful color imparted by the of these flamingos. And they need a life cycle. They require these water bodies. They go there, harvest fish, food, their time from long distances, Siberia and Middle East. They are migratory in nature, and during the post-monsoon period they arrive. They are our international guests, and they stay with us time, and with the onset of the summer, they migrate back to spend time partly in different countries, or we can say they are international assets, or they are shared assets, and therefore all the places along their routes which they patronize are important for their survival and for their well-being. So I think wetlands are savior and provide the habitat for these beautiful waterfowl. There are many other terrestrial animals like elephants, tiger, deer, which really also depend on wetlands for water as well as for other needs. Many amphibians, that is the animals which live both on water and land, part of the time their activities relate and they spend their time in water and part of the time on the land. Amphibians. There is no other place where they can survive. They cannot survive in oceans, they cannot survive in forests. They have to have a place where they can easily go from water to the land and from land to the water. These are amphibians. Frog is a good example, but there are many plants also which are amphibious. That is partly their roots are in the water, but their shoots go to the edge and is spread on the land. Most of these animals and plants will survive only when they have wetlands available to them. The point that I am trying to make is that wetlands are very rich reservoirs of biodiversity, which also happens to be the topic of this year's theme for the World Environment Day. Biodiversity means the diversity of life, which includes plants and animals. And it ranges from microscopic organisms to the large whales in the oceans, elephants on the land, and including human beings. So I think the whole variety of life that we see around, plants, animals, microorganisms, including the virus, they are all part of the biodiversity. And collectively, they are known as biodiversity. They are very rich, particularly wetlands are very rich. And you will see that 4.6% or about 6% is the total area of wetlands, but they accommodate 40% of world's plants and animal species. So they are disproportionately rich, extremely rich, and over 100,000 freshwater species have been identified from the wetlands so far. Coastal wetlands are especially very rich in marine organisms and provide a place for corals to survive and to grow, which support a huge variety of life. So think these, and then there is another group of wetlands which we call as mangroves, and here you see they are our coast guards, and they do enormous service to the country and to the humanity and to the local population for protecting from the vagaries and from the high tides and from the surfs. Because these roots that you see break down the kinetic energy of the coming wave and thus saves the seashore from erosion and protects the societies during time of tsunami and other abnormal surges. No amount of military can really safeguard the erosion of the coastal area, but for these mangrove plants. So I think they are, in one sense, guarding our territories along the coastal areas. Maharashtra, Gujarat, and all these places are very rich. But unfortunately, many of these have been destroyed. One of the best examples of the world is the Sunderbans, which is in West Bengal and which we share partly with our neighbor Bangladesh, the largest mangrove in the world. Also, these are some of the beautiful corals that we have. They are harboring a very dense variety of life. And these are nurseries for fisheries, which provide the mid-ocean and the high tide and high ocean fisheries. These are their juveniles, which really grow here and then move and grow further. So I think these are very critical. These are some of the very, again, very, very amusing plants. You may not have seen them. Each dot, which is like a pinhead, is a plant in itself. Inside this, there will be a flower. Inside this, there will be seed. This is another plant. These are known as duckweeds. And here is another leaf, which is the largest leaf in the plant world, which is known as Victoria regia. And it is present in some places in Assam and Northeast, but largely in Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and so on, and also in Latin America. So I think these are some of the curiosities that are full. And most importantly, rice. Rice is a wetland plant. The process of rice growing is only through the processes that are available in the wetlands. And half of the humanity from time immemorial is dependent for food on rice, which requires the wetland processes. Other than this, there are many things else that we are eating day in and day out, such as colocasia. In North, we call it arvi, water chestnut, makhana, lotus, and wetlands provide a whole variety of medicinal plants, which the local communities have been using for their health and well-being. Fish, rice, seaweed, and more. All is provided, and wetlands are a very major source of food. And we depend on these. At the same time, a large number of wetland products are being made by local people, which really provides an opportunity of creativity as well as of generating utilitarian items from these weeds. This is from Hariki, Punjab, and you can see there what a beautiful slivers are there and so on. They are all organic, and therefore they have no stress on the environment. At the same time, we are very, very useful and utilitarian. Now, unfortunately, because of our ignorance, because of our greed of expanding agriculture, industry, urbanization, we have drained and we have lost many wetlands. And it is for this reason that the Ramsar Convention was convened. This is a multilateral treaty signed at Ramsar, which is about 60 kilometers or 160 kilometers away at the Caspian Sea, on the edge of the Caspian Sea, where a meeting finalized the text of this convention in 1971. And this convention entered into force in December 1975. During this period, I was with the Government of India as a Secretary of Ministry, as a Secretary of Environment Planning and Coordination, which was the apex body to advise on to the central government on all matters of environment. And it is at that time that this material or this information was brought to our attention, that there is going to be a meeting at Ramsar and India has been invited. What is to be done? Take it from me, the word wetland was absolutely unknown. It is alien. It was not in the lexicon. And therefore, we have to work very hard to find out that what are these wetlands. And my association starts from then with wetlands. Since it is the government which was to participate, and therefore we have to be very sure that what we are saying, we mean it, and what we are doing, we understand it. So after considering their value and their importance, and consulting various experts, to all of them, wetland was introduced for the first time. We requested Dr. Salim Ali from Bombay Natural History Society, who was an expert ornithologist, to go and represent Government of India and report us back as to what has transpired at this meeting. He went there, represented the country, and after his meeting, he came and gave us a briefing as to what has happened, which was the beginning of the wetland investigation, research, or wetland program in this country. India finally ratified this convention on 1st February 1982. Today, the number of contracting parties, that is, which are member of this convention, are 171. Number of wetlands of international importance have gradually increased to 2,300. And the total area for these 2,300 wetlands is about 200 million hectares. Now, I would like you to I would like you to draw your attention to the title of this convention. It says Ramsar Convention on Wetlands of International Importance, especially as waterfowl habitats. Normally it is known as Convention on Wetlands. You see, it is like this, that the background for this convention started during prior to 1960. Because in Europe, wetlands were drained and most of the waterfowl, or that is water birds, disappeared, which raised a lot of concern. And people started, and scientists started looking the reasons for it, and why these birds have gone, why they are not there. And they realized the connection between waterfowl and the water bodies. And it is this loss of waterfowl which really was the prime concern, because the bird watchers and others were concerned. Meetings started, number of scientific meetings took place, but it was only later that a conference was held, which is known as Mar Conference. And it is this which crystallized the idea that we should have an international convention. This convention is not under the guardianship of any UN body, unlike Climate Convention or Biodiversity Convention. Ramsar Convention is the first convention on environment side. Now, how Ramsar Convention works may be of interest. There is a conference of contracting party, which is known as COP. As I said, there are 171 members till October 2019. 2,000 designated sites. Now there are 2,300, as I said, and 200 million hectares of land they cover. It has a standing committee, it has a secretariat at Gland, Switzerland, a scientific technical committee, review panel, which is known as STRP. It celebrates World Wetland Day on 2nd February for the obvious reasons. And the first time, the celebration of the World Wetland Day started from 1997. The idea is to really remind people of their obligation to safeguard and to protect these wonderful, unique wetland ecosystems. The convention is founded on 3 main pillars. These are the objectives. These are the cherished goals. Promoting the wise use of wetlands, developing international cooperation, developing a network of wetland sites of international importance. Although the Wetland Convention talks about international importance, but actually it was considered then, but over the years, the values of wetland and studies and knowledge about wetlands have grown with leaps and bounds. And now we realize that every wetland, it is not the wetlands which are unique, which are elite wetland, they only need to be protected. In fact, every wetland, a small village wetland is very, very critically important. It is important locally. And what is available locally along the length and breadth of the country ultimately is important for the country as a whole. So I think the concept is now growing that not only the elite wetlands, but all wetlands of all size, descriptions, locations need to be protected. I will talk about it a little later. The conference of contracting parties have met almost 13 times. They meet after 3 years. I had the privilege of representing our country as head of the delegation for the second COP, which was held at Groningen, Netherlands in 1984. I can tell you that because this is the first convention, so there were certain difficulties and there were certain lacunas which were left. The convention itself consists of 6 preambular sentences, and it has got 12 articles. The preambular sentences are of a general nature, establishing the relationship of man with nature, and so on and so forth, reminding that wetlands are important water bodies, source of water, and so on. But the important point is that this wetland, these 12 articles didn't have any provision of its amendment and modification. That was one. Secondly, it was not having any idea as to how do we select wetlands of international importance. All this modification can be done only when we really change the Wetland Convention. Modify it, amend it. And it is for that purpose the first meeting decided, first of all, they realized and they decided to do that. And therefore, 2 extraordinary meetings were done of the contracting parties during 82 and 87, where these things were accomplished. There was one more difficulty, that there was no provision of finances for this wetland. How this is going to really work without finances? So I think there was no stipulation that how the financing of this operational financing, for operational purposes, how the financing will be achieved. So I think these 2 amendments have to be plugged in, and for that the Calgary meeting deliberated upon, and in 82 the amendment was made that the Wetland Convention can be amended. This provision was plugged in. And in 84, at a Groningen, it was decided, because of the greater understanding, the greater information, research, that it is not only important as a habitat for waterfowl, but they are very important for a whole wide variety of organisms. And therefore, singling them out for waterfowl is not justified. Or in fact, it provides and it restricts the scope of the wetlands. So I think at the Groningen meeting, the Indian delegation made a very strong pitch for that. The others were also very sympathetic. In fact, they also had the same ideas. And therefore, many of these things were agreed upon, which was finally passed at the Regina, Canada COP meeting, or a special meeting in 1987. So I think these are the 2 very extraordinary meetings which have accomplished very extraordinary amendments to the original convention. Now, there was a big issue that before the government of India commits itself, we must know that where our wetlands are. And we must know that what are these resources and where they are and how many of them are there. And there was no information. There was no literature. There was no information. And the task was before me that how do we generate this information as early as possible with limited means that we had. There was no, at that time, aerial survey. There was no possibility of satellites. So I think we had only very limited means. And therefore, I did the first wetland survey in the country in 1972, which primarily was an exercise for educating people country over that what are wetlands, because nobody was aware what are wetlands. People thought they are a pond or a ditch or a lake or backwaters or a lagoon, but nobody knows what is wetland. So I think we did this survey during this period of National Committee on Environment Planning and Coordination. We took the help of the administration, the district collectors, we send our questionnaire to watering department, zoology department, fisheries department, all over the country, botany department, and so on. And we got some replies. Many were unable to reply, even with our explanatory notes, which were very elaborate and very simple. Questions were very simple, but we did get some information. Based on that information, consolidated view was arrived at, and it was considered that these are important resources which we have not recognized thus far. And that was the beginning, that the government was convinced that this is a thing on which we can commit ourselves. Well, after the formation of Ministry of Environment, again the need was felt that although a very preliminary survey was done, but it was incomplete because many people, even after all that, could not respond. So a second All India Wetland Survey was to be organized, of which I was a chairman. In 1984, we again made a questionnaire survey which was more elaborate and which is based upon the drawbacks that we experienced during the previous survey, and our data set improved very drastically. Even then it was not very complete and we were not fully satisfied, and we felt that there is still not enough information. I made another assessment and published in 1987, and we came to the conclusion that it's for the first time that India has 58.2 million hectares of wetland. This was widely quoted for many years by the Ministry of Environment and internationally. But again, there was a feeling that more accurate and better information and more refined data is needed. And therefore, while I was a member of the National Wetland Committee, we emphasized the Ministry of Environment for the satellite survey, and ISRO came forward and joined and took the task of doing this, and they produced this survey in form of Wetland Atlas of India, where we have 0.757 million wetlands. Total area is 152.6 million hectares in 2011. So you can see that the wetlands these include wetlands which are only bigger than 2.5 hectares. Smaller wetlands, again, were not able to resolve easily in the scale of 1:25,000, which was at that time 2,500, which was the scale at which it was done because of the technology limitation. But now I think we have got more and better satellites and better survey can be done. But the important point is that we have got 0.75 million wetlands. It's a large number. And all of them are having enormous value. They provide food, they provide habitat, and they provide important activities to the society. They are part of the social framework and fabric of the local communities. So all of them are important. India has declared under the obligation of Ramsar site, to begin with only 6, but now India has declared 37 sites, which are now known as wetland of international importance, with a total surface area of over 1 million hectares. India has also identified 115 sites of wetlands of national importance. So you can see that even though we have got 0.7 million, it is only very few which have received the patronage so far. A vast number of wetlands needs care and attention. The fact of the matter is that because of this laxity, a large number of wetlands we have lost and losing, and we are continue to lose them. And that is a very sad state of affairs. Wetland loss is enormous. According to Wetland International, about 64% of the world wetlands have disappeared since 1990. And nearly 90% since the start of the Industrial Revolution. So you can see that if the recharging of the groundwater gets eliminated with such a callous destruction of wetlands, it is very clear that the groundwater is depleting. It's a foregone conclusion. And you can already see that Chennai and many other cities in our country have been predicted to go without groundwater. Between 1970 and 2004, population of fish, birds and mammals, amphibians and reptiles had declined by 60% because of this callous destruction of the wetlands and these fragile ecosystems. Since 1970, 81% of inland wetland species and 33% of the coastal and marine species have declined. 25% of the wetland species are threatened with extinction. So you can see that there is an enormous amount of loss, which is irreparable, which cannot be reversed. And I think all this need to be. Even small wetlands are very important. There's a bias to have only those wetlands which have birds, which have migratory birds. But fact of the matter is there are many small wetlands which really harbor huge amount of genetic material of rice, huge amount of genetic material of many other medicinal plants. They are actually large warehouse of a whole genetic library which we will need in future for our survival, for our well-being. And all this is not available in large wetlands. They are available and they are distributed and they are not confined to large wetlands alone. And that makes a point very clear that all small wetlands need to be protected. The legal protection need to be provided. The legislation has to be made more strong, more effective to give this kind of assurance for wetlands. Many wetlands you have heard in newspaper are giving you some kind of very, very disturbing. Now these are some of the Bangalore wetlands which have been in news. They oscillate from froth to fire. Bittur, Valandur, and all these wetlands are so. Actually, in Bangalore, there were 70 lakes in 1971, which are reduced to 35 by 2017. So you can see the drastic reduction and destruction of wetlands. And it is not Bangalore alone. This story keeps repeating, and it is only an example, but this situation is the same throughout the length and breadth of the country. In Delhi itself, there were 300 plus wetlands, which have been reduced to very few. And we are now harping upon reviving one wetland and one wetland there. And that is the reason that in Delhi, there are many areas which are deprived and do not have enough groundwater. And during summer, there is a serious crisis and people fight. And there are lots of other problems that arise. Now, those international wetlands which have been declared and which are in the list, many of them, because of the abuse and because of the growing pollution and because of the waste disposal, because they are considered as a waste basket and where solid waste is deposited with impunity. At the Montrex meeting, it was decided to really identify these wetlands by the International Wetland Bureau and to put them in Montrex record. That is a record which says that these wetlands are losing their ecological value and character. Montrex record is a register of wetland sites on the Ramsar list, which are facing immediate challenges. Unfortunately, there are two wetlands of India which are on this Montrex list. One is Keladev National Park at Bharatpur, which has 2,873 hectares in Rajasthan. It was designated Ramsar site in 81, and from 90, it remains on Montrex list. So you can see that even those wetlands which we have declared a wetland of international importance are facing this neglect. There is nobody who is worried about to really bring them back and improve the situation and see that they are removed from the Montrex list, as we have done in case of Chilka. Chilka was also on this list because of the degradation and because of the destruction and because of the Another major wetland, which we consider as a prize wetland, that is Loktak Lake of Manipur. 26,600 hectares in size. It was on the international list, came in 90, and from 93, and now it is 2020. They remain on this list and nobody bothers. It has not been possible yet that we have improved this. But we say that there are so many international. So I think this list is fine, but actually the real intent and the spirit of this list is really something that we have still to learn and respect. And that is very, very important. Now, sea level rise are threatening our coastal wetlands. And in the global climate change context, these wetlands are going to be destroyed because once the sea swells and increases in size, they will simply go. These coastal wetlands play a very major role because the water, the rivers, which really fill them, provides a pressure for preventing the ingress of the salty water into the land and maintaining our aquifer and drinking water sources and wells. Minus this, the salt water will simply intrude. The pressure of the water which seeps through these wetlands provides a barrier for the ingress of the salt water into the land. And as these wetlands are going to be destroyed, the drinking water sources are going to be totally becoming saline, and thus will trigger a large inward migration of the people. No agriculture will be possible, coastal agriculture will suffer, communities will suffer. So I think these are the dangers that we have if we do not maintain these wetlands in coast. In fact, all wetlands are enormously important. It is not only the wetlands which are having only birds or wildlife, but all wetlands, even if they don't have, they play very critical and important role. Wetlands are also for disaster risk reduction. Because of the climate change, in cities there is going to be heat islands. Wetlands reduce even and negate the water-related hazards such as floods. If you have these wetlands, then the extra rain which comes due to heavy rainfall and the pattern of a change because of the small short period, very heavy rains comes. So if you have these wetlands, then they will accommodate this extra water and will reduce the surface flow resulting into floods. Minus these wetlands, the entire water will flow with speed, causing flood that we are witnessing, what we have witnessed in Chennai, what we are witnessing in Mumbai, what we are witnessing in other places, in Gujarat, and so on. So all the urban floods are resulting because that we have lost those areas which normally were shallow and used to accommodate floods. Along rivers, most of the floodplains have been reduced, and the water which used to be accommodated on these floodplains cannot be accommodated any longer because progressively we have moved gradually and progressively towards the river, and we have really eaten up most of the floodplains. So we result into, the net result is that we fail and we feel periodic flooding of our urban areas. Role of healthy wetland as a natural infrastructure, it's a natural infrastructure, is being increasingly recognized as a cost-effective component of disaster risk reduction strategy. Wetland conservation strategy for the future, we have to plan very carefully. And when we plan future strategy, we have to be very carefully appreciate the dynamicity of the wetlands. I wanted to draw your attention that wetlands increase and decrease in size. Every day their shape and morphology changes. During the post-rainy period, their size is the largest. But as the water evaporates, as the humanity make uses of this water, their size keeps on decreasing. And during the pre-monsoon period, they have the smallest size. And these wetlands keep changing their size. They are pulsating every day like a heart of the human being. And accordingly, as the area recedes, the land plants come in place where earlier there used to be water during the post-monsoon. So you can see that there is a march of plants, there is a march of animals, there is a march of insects with the march of the water edge of the wetland. And this really gives you some taste of its dynamicity. And it is this dynamicity which makes them vulnerable and highly fragile. So we must have a wetland policy which we don't have. And we must, first of all, sometimes people say, what is there in the name? There is a big thing in the name. Because when we say wetland, and those who have said every time that this is a lake, they will not understand what is wetland. And they will not follow the rules and the procedures of the wetland. First of all, there is a lot of ignorance about the wetlands in every section of the society, including those who are supposed to be the guardians of the wetlands. Because in our curricula, we do not teach about wetlands. We do not teach about their importance. We do not teach about their. In our revenue records, all wetlands are listed as wastelands. So if you have this kind of an variation, then it is obvious. So I think first of all, we have to say all water bodies, irrespective of what they are, with wetlands, so that there is a unanimity and there is a uniformity, and everybody with this word will understand that what they are. And we should have a wetland policy. We do not have. But we have wetland rules. And these rules are very loosely, because these rules are such which only address limited number of wetlands. I will just give you 2-3 examples. The Ministry of Water Resources deals with water but doesn't deal with wetlands very directly. In fact, the water policy doesn't make a very clear and any emphatic reference to wetlands. The groundwater board, the groundwater depends on wetlands, doesn't talk about wetland and have no charter and have no jurisdiction to talk about wetlands. Ministry of Environment talks about wetlands, while they don't talk about the groundwater. In fact, all water bodies are interrelated, seamlessly interrelated. Now, this seamless interconnection is totally missed. And that is the reason that wetlands have not been recognized or undervalued and underappreciated. So we need a wetland policy. Many wetlands are in forest. The foresters are trained in forestry. That is their main commitment. That is their main interest. And a land which has a static body of water is different than a dry land or a grassland or a forest. And you cannot have the same rules. You cannot have the same principles. Many of them learn a little bit because they are so, because of their professional duties for that area and so on. But this is all on account of their general knowledge or personal interest. And these personal interest and general knowledge varies from officer to officer and from time to time and from place to place. And therefore, the wetlands do not receive a concerted attention, a focused attention, a meaningful attention, and they remain the mercy of the individuals and mercy of the people. Wetland legislation is loose. If the wetlands are lost, there is no way that you can really pinpoint, because the NGT doesn't really protect wetlands. It only protects those wetlands which are listed. And you have seen that very small wetlands are listed and recognized by the government. So a large number of wetlands remain without protection. There are large number of cases where NGT has said, since it is not listed wetland and therefore nothing can be done. And the landowner or the land speculators continue to destroy these wetlands. There are a large number of cases which are filed in NGT and very few which we succeed in really protecting the wetland. Most of them, the road construction, the urbanization, agriculture, they all really devour these wetlands with impunity. Wetland monitoring is not done. Central Water Pollution Control Board does monitoring of the rivers, but not of wetland water quality. The justification doesn't exist. But since the importance of wetland is very seldom appreciated, very seldom emphasized, and therefore there is no water monitoring program for wetland, even for the elite wetlands. No conversion, in fact, no wetland should be converted to the non-wetland use, as we have that no agricultural land can be converted to non-agricultural purpose, no forest can be converted to non-forest purpose. Similarly, we should have a legislation that no conversion of the wetland for non-wetland use. Of course, in Kerala, there is a small legislation which says that paddy fields cannot be converted to non-paddy field use or non-rice fields. Wetland catchment, wetland alone is not very important. It is the area which contributes water to the wetland which is very important for the survival of the wetland. So if you have a wetland which you have identified, delineated up to the high water mark, and then rest of the place is occupied by buildings and so on, or roads and so on, then I think the wetland cannot survive, because wetland must have its unhindered source of water supply. So I think we have to have a buffer zone along with the wetland if we need so. And I think the provision and the law does not provide, or the rules do not provide that very clear. In fact, they are absolutely silent on these requirements. Wetlands need not be used as a dumping sites, which is often the case. You take Point Calumet, you take any wetland in the country, which is not suffering chronically from waste dumping. Sustainable use of wetland resources, including tourism. Sometimes it is over tourism which spoils these wetlands. Too much of pressure. Wetland impact assessment need to be done. Any project which infringes wetland must be subjected to wetland impact assessment, that how the wetland is going to be impacted. Restoration of creation of the new wetland must be given. In fact, Managra that we have, which our government has really given very liberally, a lot of money and allocation, is one such activity which is really encouraging and creating wetlands in the villages. And as the wetlands are getting created, the village economy improves drastically, provides new job opportunities, provides new products. Wetland and education must be encouraged from our school level to the university level. We must have. In fact, it is very high time to have a National Institute of Wetland Research. And then public awareness and participation. And I must say that the new college, law college, has done a great job in selecting this topic and asking me to really share my views on these wetlands. And then with this, I wish to really close my comments, as I think that this little introduction has given you a little taste of the importance and the need for wetlands. I can assure you that if you have more wetlands, and if every village has a wetland, then our village economy is going to be strengthened and grow. And as the village economy is going to grow, the national economy is going to grow. The agricultural production will grow. Livelihoods will multiply. And people will find a very profitable living and a very contented living. Thank you very much for listening to this talk.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your insightful remarks on wetlands. Sir, I am delighted to inform you that the Environment Cell of the New Law College, Bharati Vidyapeeth, deemed to be university, took up the cause of URAN and Panje wetland destruction with all its zeal, with all the force. And sir, I'm delighted to inform you that the government has acted on our request, and all the construction activities in the Panje wetland area has now been stopped. Sir, there's a saying in Sanskrit, Prakriti Rakshati Rakshita, meaning nature protects you only when you protect it.
Absolutely.
Sir, wetland being an important part of our ecosystem by providing habitat to various floral and faunal species, and also providing us with water, preserving it is not just necessary, but is very much required. Sir, thank you very much for your insights on this particular issue. Sir, we shall now move on to the vote of thanks. It is my honor to present the vote of thanks for today's event. At the outset, I would like to remember our founder chancellor, Dr. Patangrao Kadam sir, because of whose blessings this webinar has been a great success. Equally, I would like to thank our chief coordinator ma'am, Dr. Jyoti Dharma ma'am, who has been a guiding light for all our endeavors and has been a pillar of strength. Also, I would like to specially mention the able leadership provided by our coordinator, Dr. Jayashree Khandare ma'am, under whose supervision and leadership the Environment Cell is destined to touch and scale new heights. Once again, on part of the entire Environment Cell family, I extend my sincere gratitude to you, sir, for taking out time out of your busy schedule and gracing this occasion. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.